Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed. Yesterday, the IGP did put up a release wherein they did go ahead to ban FSARS, as many know them as, but we'll eventually go ahead and see the breakdown of all of those. So what that then means is that, well, what you might have been seeing previously on the road, chances are that it will change. Now, the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, FSARS, and other tactical squads of the force, the Special Tactical Squad, STS, Intelligence Response Team, IRT, Anti-Cultism Squad, and other tactical squads operating at the federal, zonal, and command levels, those that have been, of course, will be affected by this ban. So what this means is there will be no routine patrols and other conventional low-risk duties. There will be no stop and search duties, no checkpoints, no mounting of roadblocks, no traffic checks with immediate effect. It sounds like a dream, right? But that is the implication of that particular directive from the office of the IGP coming through yesterday. So, joining us this morning to weigh into this matter, we've got two gentlemen, Mr. Fatai Owosheni, who is a former commissioner of police in Lagos. He was also in Benue and several other states, as well as also serving in the force headquarters. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. And okay, and beside him, we've got Atanibi Alamiha, who is a professor of criminology. Good morning, and thank you for joining us as well this morning.
Good morning.
Okay, let me start with Mr. Owosheni. Now, yes, as you may have seen with some of the headlines, many, as a matter of fact, when this broke yesterday, just felt, wait a minute, we've seen this sort of directive before. So the big question is this the way to go? What kind of import will this directive have?
Good morning, Prof, teachers, and good morning, the studio and viewers. I always start by saying it is not the best way to go. It is actually not the way to go. I think what the police leadership should do is to probably audit the internal oversight mechanism that is in place. All what is happening, it's because somehow the police had refused and failed to discharge the responsibilities in accordance with the extant rules and regulations. The so-called Federal SARS, the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad, they have rules and regulations that guide them. We've consistently failed to abide with this rule. And when measures like these are taken, nobody go back to audit those measures to see the level of compliance. Everybody now in all the so-called tactical units are not necessary. I've decided to wear T-shirts. It's either they put gallant or they put mopol behind them. And you find out that the commanders at the state level don't bother to even check what these guys are doing. To the extent that once you see some bad-looking policemen on the road with T-shirts, everybody says it's SARS. SARS itself is not bad as it is portrayed. But you find out at the divisional level, DPOs have also formed all sort of units, and they wear those T-shirts. And once you see them on the road, everybody will say it's SARS. I will, summarize it as bring people into from the commissioner of police, the divisional police officers. The last time that these things became viral, the office of the vice president set up a committee. I'm aware that the office of the national security advisor did the same thing. Measures were rolled out, but the complying units, the authorities, do they even bother to comply with this? In service, some of us, fought this on the need for the leadership not just to be creating all sort of units that don't add up. You see people that work in the PMF, in SARS, in whatever, they move from one unit to the other. It's circulating the violence. And above all, you also have a society that is now militarized. It is just all about violence. The special anti-robbery squad are supposed to work based on actionable intelligence, not just to go on the road. It is not done anywhere in the world where policemen will just stand on the road and be checking people's telephone. It is unacceptable. And then as long as the authority also, favor people that use extrajudicial means to carry out duty and tag them as super this, super that. You encourage all sort of things like that. To go to the federal SARS, to go to SARS, there is a condition that must have served for a period of years. But you now see a situation that a minted constable, a freshly passed out constable is posted to SARS. A freshly passed out cadet is posted to SARS, is posted to Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Yes, I don't want to be blaming the members of the public as well, because the leadership, you would see them writing letters. IG, we want this one to be there, we want that one to be there. So the police authority must stand their ground to say that they want to work within the extant rules and regulations. This is the bane of all these things. It is not the best way. It's to audit the system and make sure that we keep to extant rules and regulations.
Okay, so quite a lot, packed in there. But let's switch to Professor Lemi and get his perspective on this particular directive. What do you think? What kind of impact do you think it will have?
Okay, let's just go back to who the police are. I always want to start by saying, ideally, police are human rights workers. They are established to protect all the fundamental rights that we have in Chapter 4 of our Constitution. Unfortunately, this is not the case always, because you have a minority of them who do not behave professionally. With respect to SARS, I'm happy at the beginning you listed about 5 different units, which members of the public generically call SARS. You have the SARS itself, you have the Intelligence Response Team, you have the Special Tactical Squad, you then have Anti-Cultism Squad, then Police Mobile Force. Except for the Police Mobile Force, these are supposed to be intelligence-led policing operations squads. They are not supposed to be visible. They are not supposed to be in daily contact with people. As Fatai Owoseni said, the retired CP, these are people who ought to act on the basis of intelligence. So they go straight to their target and not hide on the highway doing what they are not supposed to do. But having said that, you also mentioned, I think rightly, that this kind of instruction had been given before. I know specifically when the present IG was appointed in January 2018. We were in the midst of the presidential panel of SARS, of which I was a member. And immediately he came, he took certain measures, trying, if you like, to domesticate this tactical unit, which previously were reporting to the force headquarters within the state command. And we did hope that that would have changed some of the problem that we have. But Chaplain, I think one of the problems we've had is what I call in our architecture, we are increasingly merging covert intelligent operation with overt operations. So you find those who are supposed to be non-active operators on the street with their badges and the rest of it. So there are a lot of confusion in the policing architecture in the country. Perhaps, speaking for the authorities, maybe the desperation to be seen to be doing something in the midst of high security.
So, Prof, if I could just jump in and ask this now, haven't seen this latest directive in consideration of the ones that have happened before. The big question is, what kind of impact will this have? Will it achieve the purpose for which it was announced?
Well, the previous one did not work, in part, as Owoseni said, because there's lack of supervision. I don't know whether there is going to be a new mechanism for supervising more effectively under the present regime. So basically, it's a matter of supervision. If you give people assignments, you don't supervise them, they will probably also give themselves, additional terms of reference. And I think that's what is happening. Police gave them its own terms of reference, but they have also added their own terms of reference, and nobody is holding them accountable. So,
Okay.
except there is an increasing supervision, nothing will change.
All right, Mr. Woshini, you have said, look, this will not necessarily achieve the purpose for which it was announced, and that the problem has to do with monitoring. So why then is it that, the police high command should know this? Why are they not doing it rather than keep announcing fresh directives when perhaps whenever there's a huge outcry?
That's just it. You have, just like Nigeria, you have all sort of laws that have not been enforced, that have not been implemented, that have not even been tried. So also is the institutions that we have now. Directives are issued out, lead managers are not appointed to see how these things are implemented and enforced. And you have just a few number of some of the commissioners of police that don't even know what the duties of commissioners of police are. You have commissioners of police that just say, of his own. And if you have such, all of you saw us in Lagos, we were all out there. Some commissioners of police don't even know that they have responsibility of all the police contingents in their state. Some of us stood to challenge it when an IG came, just like Prof had said, to put a junior officer to head the federal SARS and said all the SARS units should be reporting to them. I resisted it in Lagos. You must know what you have as your powers within the Constitution. Some of the commissioners of the police, sadly, and I'm sorry to say this, don't even know that they have such authorities. You have commissioners of police that are not ready to speak truth to the leadership. And of course, they don't also allow their junior officers, the DPOs, to also speak the truth to them. It's just all about using on from SARS. Once they move to hierarchy, from hierarchy, they go to anti-cultism. In Lagos, we said then, I don't want anti-cultism. In some of the states, Oyo State now, they have all sort of units that are not necessary. The police regulation is there as a guide, but we've deviated from that. That is what the police leadership should sit down on, audit that internal oversight mechanism and know how they can implement it. We shouldn't have gotten to this level. And of course, while we're doing that, the society needs to be enlightened. The society is militarized. There's a culture of violence in Nigeria now. And that is another aspect of it. No policeman should be on the road. In fact, when the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Arase, was there, he designed uniform for these people so that you can, identify who is SARS, and they work on actionable intelligence. They will draw back to their office, not remaining on the road, but the divisional police officers, the commissioners of police in the different states are refused for one consideration or the other. If you've compromised your integrity with your DPOs, if the DPOs have compromised their integrity with their officers by creating antivirus and whatever, collecting money from them, we will not get it right. The leadership in Nigeria, the leadership of the police must take people to account for their real responsibilities. That is lack of supervision. That is dereliction of duty. The police leadership must take those officers into account for that.
Well, let me ask Prof this. Well, you and Mr. Osheni, Prof, you have listed a number of things, talked about monitoring, talked about supervision, and talked about the structures of the police system and all of that. Perhaps the issue here is really identifying why FSARS officers, four times banned, why they seem to continue in this particular trajectory of human rights violations and all of that we have seen. Prof, from where you stand and your relationship with the police authorities over the years, what can you say is the root cause of this seemingly intractable activities of FSARS, who have been banned and rebanned, structured and restructured, and yet the problem seems to remain? What do you think is the core problem?
I think two major problems. One is the increasing violence and crime in society. So there is a genuine demand for effective crime control. Unfortunately, from the police angle, it is believed that the solution to such situation is units like Police Mobile Force and SARS. That's the first problem. The widespread crime in society and the police response in form of this kind of unit. The second point is much more technical. When there are problems like this, so solutions are then offered without studying the reasons for it. It's not knowledge driven. I give you an example. There was a time, I think, again, where the SARS was, the panel in 2018. Immediately, the acting president announced the need for SARS to be reformed. I recall under the former IG, by evening, reform was already announced, without thinking through the complexity of what that means. So within 8 hours, a reform was announced by the former IG. That tells you that there is lack of understanding on how serious the problem was and still is. So I think the two problems is that the police have not taken time to step back and understand why is it repeatedly SARS has this kind of reputation. I'm not surprised. When you study police, you do know that a minority of officers are responsible for majority of misconduct. We also know that specific units, divisions, police stations tend to be notorious for atrocities, while majorities actually behave properly. But you need to be able to identify which unit of police are known for atrocities, which divisional stations and police stations are known for atrocities. So I think basically it's the tendency to act without thinking, without evidence, without trying to understand the complexity of the issues. So I think that those are the two major problems. And as long as we just think it's a question of issuing out regulations and rules without understanding what kind of people can do SARS work, what kind of people can do the RRT work, are they properly trained for it? Or once you are posted, you think what you need to succeed is actually a batch of the number of violence that committed or attributed to you. I think these are the challenges. Until we go back to that, whoever is posted to SARS is going to meet a structure in which, even if it's not going to be a perpetrator, you have to acquiesce into a culture that already existed of brutality.
Huge questions. I mean, if you go on social media and look at what a lot of young people are saying, you'll understand their pain. But Mr. Owosheni, for a lot of people, they wonder, is there any part in the SOP or rules of engagement that says that those with a certain kind of car or a certain type of hairstyle, a certain type of dressing should be targeted? Is that anywhere in the SOP or the rules of engagement of the police or maybe some of these units? Please help us understand.
Nothing of such. Just like Prof had said, it's just a minority of people, the rogue police, that do that. There is nothing like that. And just like we've also said of nations, when you allow rule of law to come into play, things would be done in a civilized manner. For institutions like police, once you jettison the extant rules and regulations, the police regulations have the measures there. The various FSARS administrative instructions have those things there. We've not been able to comply with all this. Just like I said, you cannot go to a CID in those days if you've not served up to 3 years in the police. But you see freshers going in there and no training, no retraining, the tools with which to work are not provided for them. When measures are rolled out, for example, it's not long ago that the IG said IRC should not create offices just like the previous IG said. Nobody had followed up to see that they comply with this. And you overcompensate violence. It's people that do extrajudicial means that even the press and the members of the public celebrate. Once you do that, the young officers will think that the way to go is to go and be killing people and be getting promotion. We must stop that. The standards are there.
Yeah.
As I've always
Pardon
said,
me, Mr. Wosheni, if I could just follow up on that. Are you referring to some of the functions or activities of, say, the IRT?
All those units that are created, there are regulations, extant rules under which they will work. But you have a situation that what determines who goes there now is about monetary thing. It is not based on what the regulations have said. Measures are there. You cannot go to IRC if you've not served for a period of year. You cannot go to SARS if you've not, even the CID generally. But you now see that these boys go there with violence. They are overcompensated. You refer to this as super power cop, super this and whatever. And the young officers think that is the way to go. The police must operate within the extant rules and regulations. It's been jettisoned. They must be posted based on professional knowledge, not any other means. I mean, but here.
Okay, Mr. Wosheni, we're having a bit of a challenge with your connection. We lost some part, but while we try to reconnect, Prof. Now, the IGP's statement says that these men, these units and teams have been banned at the federal, the zonal, the command levels from conducting what they call stop and search duties, checkpoints, mounting of roadblocks, traffic checks with immediate effect, implying that stopped yesterday. And a lot of people wonder, so what happens next, or what should happen next with those men? Is it enough to ban? Will those men, of course, they will continue some of their operations, just some of these operations that were banned. So what should happen with these men, especially the ones that have been, fingered to have compromised in their duties? What should happen with them, and what should be their mode of operation henceforth?
Well, thank you, Chaplain. I think basically part of the problem is that routine police work have been turned into specialized police work, and a huge proportion of the police officers are moved there. Checkpoint, very unnecessary. Patrol is far better than checkpoint. And so in modern civilized societies, you don't really want checkpoints, except for a very short time in order to do a particular operation. Maybe there is an emergency. So patrol is actually a better option than checkpoint. So many of those duties are routine police duties, which should not be carried out by a specialized tactical unit. That's the first thing we need to recognize. Unfortunately, because they are not supervised, these different units have been carrying out routine police duty. I think what to do again is, I'll go back to the question of supervision and accountability. I think it was one broadcaster on NTA those days who said on Sunday, say by 9 o'clock, do you know where your children are? The truth is, the police authorities at the federal, ready force headquarters, zonal, and command level, do they even know where their officers are? I doubt they do, if they know, because there isn't a good database. There is no good mechanism for monitoring which officer is where at what time, which vehicle is where at what time. So there is quite a lot that technology can do to begin to supervise people effectively. So there isn't either physical supervision nor technological monitoring of these officers. So what I suspect is that a lot of this will be carried out more or less illegally. And for members of the public, it's difficult to know when it is legal and illegal. And that's a challenge that we must face. And until the police, as an organization, comes out with very succinct rules both understood by the police and the public, we may not get to the root of this problem. So there is need to go back, I think as Owosini said, to go back to the SOPs and then simplify them, and then in a way, make them known to the members of the public. And these too many different uniforms are also a problem.
All right, Prof. Just hang on a minute. We'll come back to both of you in just a moment. Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. So, Mr. Wosheni, correct us if you're wrong. What you're saying is that if they really, or the police high command really wants an impact or really wants the complaints by Nigerians to be addressed, they need to ensure that they revisit all of those units, different kinds of units that have been set up in different police commands across the country, and scrap many of them that ought not to be there. Secondly, they need to ensure that they put in place a system of monitoring, because they've announced this kind of policies before and is being flouted because nobody is monitoring. Are those some of the key issues that you have raised, or else it will come across? If those things are not done, it will mean that, well, for want of words, they will just be playing to the gallery. That's the way it's coming across. Is that your point?
Absolutely. The internal oversight mechanism must be strengthened. People should not be posted into those offices like the provost, as we call it, on punitive, for punitive reasons. It is when a commissioner of police misbehaves to say post him to provost. In the state, it is when policemen misbehave to say post them to provost. No, we must revisit that. There must be more emphasis on routine performance of routine police duties. It's so bad now that no policeman wants to work a bit. We have foot patrols, we have pin-down points. What they are interested is in wearing all manners of jackets and t-shirts to carry guns on the road. Nigerians are not animals. Nigerians are not criminals. Zonal AIGs, that is zonal offices that are created for supervisory purpose, administrative purpose. The AIGs compete with commissioners of police for operational duties now. It is wrong. It is not meant to be like that. Duties must be discharged within the context of extant rules and regulations, and we must bring people into account, up to the DPOs and whatever. We must also stop the proliferation of uniform. You just create one unit. Before you know it, they design a cap that are not known to our extant rules and regulations. And that is why everybody thinks, including people that are not policemen now, that are not from the police institutions, they'll just go and wear t-shirts, put gallants, put mopo. Some of them are not even in that. Divisional police officers must be told that they cannot create all sorts of units like antivirus and wear t-shirts.
But Mr. Wosheni, you know,
Commissioner of Police here in the
let me ask.
We went back.
Pardon me for that. Now, the FSARS, the federal SARS, yes, they are the federal level, but we also do have the ones in states, which the police commissioners are supposed to supervise. Now, what is going on in that regard? Why is it that the CPs can't seem to rein them in, even DPOs? What's going on? Why is it that lax?
Because those commissioners of police don't know their powers under the Constitution. It's one of the things that made some of us run into trouble with leadership. When a chief superintendent of police was made to head SARS by one inspector general of police, and they said everybody must report to force headquarters. We reminded them of the Constitution, that the police commissioner in the command has the responsibility for oversight mechanism of all the police contingents in the state. No Assistant Inspector General of Police in the zone should take the operational duties of the command commissioners of police. It's a constitutional thing. And all sort of uniforms that the police are wearing now, they are not known to the first order. We have a dress code. Everybody just wear all sort of caps, all sort of shoes, all sort of all those things. We must stop that. We must re-educate our people. And well-meaning Nigerians must also help in reducing the violence in the society now. Because where you have situations that people call you to say that area boys are fighting. You get there, they throw stones. Some of them use locally made pistols to fire at police. So you now see members of the public saying, oh, don't send those policemen in black and black. Oh, we want MOPO, we want SARS. No, this is not the way to go about it. So the police leadership has the authority to go back into the extant rules and regulations. There are enough there to guide all these abuses. We should stop setting up panels, reeling out measures that we don't enforce, just like we create all sort of laws. All this proliferation must stop. There's no need. There's somebody said, "Oh, Father." The same thing we said about community policing. Someone came and said that the institutional memories must be employed when doing these things. And once you do that, you work within the extant rules and regulations, just like nations must be run under the rule of law. All these things will come into place. The police leadership has a responsibility to ensure that the internal oversight mechanism is strengthened. That's my point.
All right. Well, Prof, you just mentioned that you were part of that panel that reviewed some of the activities of this unit that we're talking about. But you know, some of the accusations that have come against them over the years have included extortion. You know, they arrest people just because they want to make sure that they collect money from them, among several other things. So I don't know, please give us information if indeed your panel reviewed some of those activities, and what were the punitive measures, if any, for any of the people that must have been found wanting at that point. What were the things that they were told? What were the disciplinary activities or actions given to them, if any, that could have stopped them? Otherwise, it would seem like, you know, none of the activities of that panel made any specific or deliberate impact on what we have now.
Thank you. The panel work was very thorough, because it invoked the instrument setting up Human Rights Commission. And the Executive Secretary of the Human Rights Commission was the chairman of the panel. And the report of the panel came in different sections. There were those who were recommended for internal police administrative sanctions. There were those who were recommended for prosecution. There were those people who were also recommended to be further investigated. Talking about extortion, it was quite troubling when we discovered in the course of the work of the panel that members of, again, we're using SARS as a generic term, but the tactical squad, the intelligence response team, particularly along with SARS, they come to you and said, we had information that the car you are riding was stolen. The car is taken from you. And then, of course, before you know it, 6 months later or 3 months later, you'll find that the officers were riding your car in your neighborhood. We actually find a number of those kind of instances. Recently, the last time I spoke with the Executive Secretary of National Human Rights Commission, there was a man, actually the chief magistrate in Benue, whose matrix given to the wife was seized. 2 years on, we couldn't find the matrix. They said that Assistant Commissioner of Police had actually bought that matrix and it was auctioned. So there were a lot that were found by the panel. There were some which were able to solve immediately. I think about 2 people got their vehicle back. Even in Lagos, also were able to return vehicles to some people have been deprived of their vehicle by this team. So it is really bad. But like I said, a few of them, and those few are really, really, really bad. They had no remorse. They were arrogant, even with extrajudicial killing. But as it is said, one of the things that we are still talking about FSARS. When I saw FSARS yesterday, I was a little bit concerned, because the directive given in January 2019 or 2018, when the present IG came into power, was that there should be no SARS that will not report to the state command. So they were taking, all of them were supposed to be embedded in state command and under the supervision of the state police command. If you do that, then of course the instruction yesterday said the right thing, that the zonal commander, the zonal AIGs, the state police commissioner will be held accountable. The IG does not need to go to a state and begin to ask what is going on. If you hear that something happened in Osun, there is a zonal IG, they are holding him accountable for that occurrence. The zonal AIG will hold the command, the commissioner of police in Osun responsible. And I think that's what they need to tidy up in terms of supervision.
Well, Prof, just one moment. Just one moment, Prof. This issue that you just brought up now, I think perhaps it also underscores one of the issues that many people have been raising about the policing system in the first place, which is the fact that it is too over-centralized. So does this in any way then suggest that maybe if we structured the police system into 36, give each one of them autonomy, and then the authorities at that level will be able to do essentially, validating this whole campaign about state police. Do you think that will solve the problem largely?
I'm not too sure. I think there are, issues of norms, values that are involved. Because if you look at the state institution, that institution that operate at the state level, are they really more accountable than those of the federal? So it's a more fundamental problem about our attitude, about our values, about our, value of accountability, value of service, and the rest of it. I think there are already mechanisms by which, if they are effective, there should be that level of indiscipline. Just take an example. Every senior police officer in the Nigeria police force are not likely to get away with misconduct as much as the junior officers. And the difference is that there is a relative database. You have some database for senior officers, but there is just no database for junior officers to do. So they do whatever they want, and then they get transferred with the bad conduct. Nobody's aware, they record, and they continue to get promoted. So we're dealing with more fundamental issue about, first, who gets into this unit, as Owoseni had said. The second thing is, when they are unit, who supervises them? Then thirdly, what are the consequences? I'm not aware that the panel of SARS, the report has been substantially implemented. And so it is not the punishment, the severity of the punishment, but the certainty that people will be punished for their misconduct that make people behave. So we are dealing with a lot of challenges. Of course, police are very important. They carry out power, but they are not fundamentally different from the kind of misconduct that has become widespread in our society.
Right. Mr. Owosheni, the demand from a lot of Nigerians is simple. They say, end SARS now. Now, we got a ban. And the question they're asking is it possible to end SARS? Because that's the demand, that's the trend, that's what people are calling for. So is that reasonable in the context of, one, the security challenges we have in the country, the fact that, we keep saying that we need more hands. So is it feasible to end SARS now?
I think it's not as if it's about ending SARS. If you say end SARS, you can as well say, ask the Nigeria police to fold up. It is about the police, coming out to educate the people. What is the difference between SARS and other units? Prof had said it. There is the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. We shouldn't have any unit in any command because they have SARS in those commands. It's the issue of the Nigerian police coming up to really educate the people what the whole of these things is all about. Even when panels are set up, you find out that the police is not well represented. They just send some officers that don't even have the knowledge of what is being discussed. The prophet said it. Some measures were taken. People were said to be punished. People were asked to be dismissed. And you find a situation that even when these recommendations are made, when officers are punished, they are brought back into the system through all kind of political interference and faulty judicial process, because when the police is taking the court, they are not represented. And the Police Service Commission will now come up to say, this officer has gotten judgment. It is sad. I'm afraid. You have quite a lot of criminals who have been found guilty being returned back to the police by the Police Service Commission through all these faulty judicial processes or political interference. The police leadership must sit down and do an audit of internal oversight mechanism. There must be a kind of working together with the Police Service Commission to ensure that officers that are dismissed, that are jailed, don't come back into the system. Political interference must be stopped. Late Agui Rossi said that in 1957 as part of the introductory report to the Wheeling Commission. Police should not be under any political interference. The police leadership must resolve to work within the ambit of extant rules and regulations. This has been neglected. We must not overcompensate people that use extrajudicial means. You can't say because someone had killed another person when you didn't even investigate the person that is killed, whether it's an armed robber or whatever. Prof had said it. Some of the vehicles that were recovered would later be sold under one form of auction or the other. And of course, you, the media people too, you celebrate them. The members of the public celebrate them. No, there are, honest professional officers that are doing their work based on extant rules and regulations, using knowledge-driven approach to carry out their work. It is those ones that are just on the road doing all sorts of things that we celebrate. Let us go back to extant rules and regulations, just like nations are preaching, ensure that the rule of law comes to play. Once the leadership of the police resolve that they will work within the extant rules and regulation, we get it right. Once they don't post people based on punitive to the, when someone has misbehaved and you post him to go and do internal oversight, what do you expect?
All right, but now that this directive has been put out there by the police, the IGP, well, this morning on the way to work, I still saw some police personnel on the roads, but they were not stopping cars as they used to before today. Now, chances are that tomorrow, just as you've highlighted, if no one monitors, they may get back to doing the same things that they've been doing before. What would you advise Nigerians? How should they conduct themselves? Because chances are that as a result of this announcement, you may find motorists who the police authority may stop on the roads who is with a gun, and then someone is arguing with somebody with a gun, and who knows, anything could happen if it's in the dead of the night. How would you advise, Nigerians conduct themselves if they happen to see one person or so on the roads, as it were?
Okay.
Let Mr. Osheni address it first. I'll come to you later, Prof. Pardon me.
Okay.
Mr. Osheni, go ahead. That's for you.
What I would expect Nigerians to do is that if they see people wielding guns on the road and are not in proper police uniform, they should be careful, play along, and find a way of getting the information across to the police leadership. What we should expect now are police observatories, pin down points, where you park your vehicle by the side, remain there in uniform. It has been said repeatedly, people should not be on the road in T-shirts without uniform. That is why the former Inspector General of Police designed a uniform for SARS, that we know that this is SARS. Once you are not in proper police uniform, you shouldn't be on the road. Even then, it is not road blockages that reduce crimes. It increases extortion. What people should do is to create, commissioners of police should create observatories. Park your vehicle by the side. If there is need to get onto the road based on maybe a distress call, it will be done, within that period, and you withdraw back to your vehicles. We should use observatories and pin down points. And once members of the public say that, because of the fear, just be tactical, play along, find a way of getting messages to the police leadership that this is what we've noticed. No argument, nothing. And I think that will help us.
You know, just before we get Prof's response to that, you mentioned that roadblocks only increase extortion, and in fact, it doesn't reduce crime. And one wonders, quickly, what is responsible for that extortion? Is it the fact that policemen are underpaid or welfare is not good enough? Why is extortion something that some policemen resort to from time to time?
You see, unfortunately for the Nigerian police, because of the bad names that we've hand for ourselves. Extortion, it's all over the country. Why you talk about the police zone is that police is in every nook and cranny, and they deal with the lowest level of the populace that will probably say it out of that highest level. But for the police, funding is part of the problem. To give a patrol, gives a police division officer to go and carry out police duties with 30,000 naira for 3 months. They must fuel the vehicle, they must replace the tires. So the police, we need to sit down and agree whether we even want to have a police. To me, I would probably say we are not ready to have a police.
Yeah, but Mr. Osheni, is it true? Is it true that in some cases, when you see those roadblocks or those checkpoints and then they're extorting people, it's either the DPO in that area or the CP has allowed that and then they make returns to them?
Some DPOs and some commissioners of police will probably do that, which is unacceptable. But then it is what it is. It has to be stopped. If the commissioners of police would post DPOs based on a return, if the force headquarters will post commissioners of police to state command based on what it can give some people in force headquarters, and it is not a well thought out thing that you look at professionalism, competence, and all those things, you will find that we must accept. I've said before, we must accept that somehow. Because we overlook certain things, we don't keep to our rules and regulations. Some of these things do happen, but it's not as if it is that bad. It can.
All right. So, Prof, in your case, I mean, as a criminologist, would it be how will civilians, Nigerians, conduct themselves?
Even when police deploy, people going to be on the road.
Okay. Pardon me, Mr. Osheni. Let me bring in Prof at this time. My apologies. Well, Prof, talk to us. I mean, what would you recommend the criminal mindset as a criminologist, a professor at that? How should we, move on with this?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is for police not to keep trying to stay, stumbling all over and over again. I think it needs to take stock. It needs really to step back and take stock of the values that have been added by this unit. I think they need to retrain the larger proportion of the police to do routine police work. The very special cases that special units are expected to carry out, they are not a very large segment of police work. And so we don't need this large number of police officers in this specialized unit. They need to be well trained. They need, in fact, to have the necessary gadget to work with, but they don't need to be as large as they are. And they also to be response teams. I think what has happened, they have become the first responder, where they are supposed to be actually responding to the first responder. And I think that's the challenge that the police have. So they need to step back and look at what benefit have we derived from roadblocks? How much crime have been stopped? How much has it assured people of their safety? How has it lessened the fear of crime? They need to assess these values and then discover which one they need to retain, they need to retrain.
Okay, well, we have to thank you both for talking to us today. Professor Etanibi Alemika, criminologist, the professor of criminology, and then Mr. Fatai Owosheni, former commissioner of police in Lagos, Benue. Thank you both for your time today.
Thanks so much.